Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. We're here for the Board of Health meeting. This time I will call the meeting to order. Executive session.
10 minutes
10 minutes.
with the whole board, to include myself and Chris Murray.
So at this point, we'll go into executive session for approximately 10 minutes under RCW. Approval of July 9th, 2025 regular Board of Health meeting, August 20th, 2025.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the minutes of July 9th and August 2020.
I second that.
Second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Public comment is there anyone in the room for public comment? Hello.
I'm Maya Benton. I'm a resident of the Tri-Cities and a concerned citizen. I work at the health district, but I'm expressing my concerns as an individual. I'm not connecting this to anybody. I did this by myself. I did all writing and research on my own time. My senior admin assistant will handle this portion of the notes, as she did the notes of the previous Board of Health meeting that I'm commenting on. Made me a little nervous, but
Can we do one thing real quick? I want to help you out so I can all see.
okay.
Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
I can't see. I don't know what I can't see.
You can't see, I can't hear.
Gotta make sure I can.
Oh.
Come with the camera.
Okay.
Yeah, because we just can't see.
I'm gonna write you.
Yeah, I have you.
Here we go.
Was there not a microphone up there?
There isn't.
No, sorry, I'm not a very loud speaker. But I'm concerned about comments that were made at the July Board of Health meeting regarding gay pride. I found it very unsettling to leverage health district employees' activities during their lunch hour in an argument that began as a discussion about on-site sewage. There's been a misunderstanding of what pride means to the LGBTQ community. I don't believe it was a post that needed to be apologized for. I believe that there's been a misuse of Board of Health time to air personal grievances rather than to care about the community and well-being of our community. I value respect in all aspects of my life, especially in a work setting. I have immense respect for everyone in this room. Our counties with passion and with dignity and respect. I work very hard to earn and feel deserving of my coworkers and supervisors' respect. And I feel safe at the health district knowing that it isn't conditional on my sexuality or who I keep company with. No one deserves to feel alienated in the workplace. I understand that some of us feel silenced or not heard or censored, but that's being reflected back into the community. 3.4% of American adults are gay or lesbian. If we're talking the broad umbrella of LGBTQ plus people, that's 9.3%. That's nearly 1 in 10. Gay and trans people are your neighbors, your coworkers, business owners, staff, friends, and family, and we deserve to feel just as welcome in this boardroom as everyone else. We deserve to have privacy and the right to not be scrutinized by the people who are supposed to support the health and well-being of our community. Gay pride is about many things. It's about community, celebration, and remembrance of the heroes and trailblazers who got us here. What's among the most important aspects to me is the mental health and physical health of queer youth. LGBTQ plus students are more likely to be verbally and physically attacked by other students. In high school, I was president of the Gay Straight Alliance Club at Kennewick High School. I've seen and experienced firsthand what homophobia looks and feels like and how it's been swept under the rug by school officials and administration. For queer kids, it's important to see that gay and trans people can not only live, but thrive in a safe and welcoming environment. To know that there are allies and advocates that you can trust to love and care for you. I want them to know that regardless of censorship and erasure and misunderstanding, that I am proud of them. I'm very proud of my community for all that they have gone through. And to see my coworkers, whom I don't speak for, they didn't ask me to come up and defend them, but for them to be put and made as an example is really disheartening and very inappropriate, in my opinion. I'll quote one of my heroes, Harvey Milk, when I say that young gay people who are coming out and hear these comments, the only thing they have to look forward to is hope. I want them to feel safe knowing that there are loud mouths like me to make sure that it truly does get better. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope that if we can't move toward acceptance, then we can at least move toward tolerance. Because positive change doesn't happen without dialogue. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room for public comment? Is there anybody online? Hearing none, we'll move on to senior staff comment, if any. None? Okay. Any unfinished business? Moving on to new business, request for one full-time employee environmental health specialist in the water lab, presented by Kyle Phillips and Aaron Pocket.
Hello, everyone. So this position is a 1.0 FTE for an environmental health specialist for the water lab. This position is for dedicated support for the new LCMS and other aspects of the this position would be going to trainings for the new LCMS provided by Agilent to help set up and work on getting the methods accredited. So we anticipate this position to be budget neutral once the machine is up.
Is this a newly created position? This is
Yes.
the new, and how is that going to impact the budget?
So for this year, we would probably eat a little bit of the cost because the machine is not up and running yet, but we did get a huge grant for this machine. In the future, we expect this machine to bring in revenue due to the contracts that we'll be getting with other agencies to run samples for them, for us in the community and statewide.
Kyle, do you want to talk about the surplus that we have this year as well?
Yeah.
We've experienced a significant surplus in the lab this year from some special projects we've taken on, primarily from the city of Pasco, getting that wastewater treatment plant up and going. So Kyle can speak to the numbers a little bit, but we've looked at the numbers and we have enough from that surplus to float until we get the machine going and bring revenue in. And then that will make it a sustainable budget neutral position at that point.
So we have about a $25,000 surplus in the lab currently. So if we bring in this position in October or November, then that surplus would just help support that staff. Yes.
So just out of curiosity, you expect, so this person is going to be just running this one piece of equipment 5 days a week? Is that the?
Yeah, it is a very technical piece of equipment that you need very specific training for, and you would dedicate someone just to running that machine. Keep it up and going, and then making sure that we don't have any service gaps. There will be cross-trained people in the lab, but that'll ensure that we don't have any service gaps if people need those more in-depth analysis done by that.
Okay. So part of my was how we were running this before this thing, like how we're doing it now.
We don't have an LCMS
You don't?
now. Yeah, so this was we got a $500,000 grant for this machine. We'd be the only health district in the state that has one. And we would split a lot of the environmental sampling for like algae with King County Environmental Lab on the west side. And so it's new and innovative and needs somebody who has to know how to do that.
So on the financial side, years two to three, let's say that it's not a wash all the way for the first year, that's what you basically said, and I heard that, I understand that. But years 2 through 5, you're really looking at this being budget neutral just because of all the, there's not a lot of competition out there for what you guys expect the need to be out.
That's the hope. Yeah,
Okay.
the methods we would run through this machine are typically more expensive. You'll see out on the market, a test will be $300-400
Okay.
because they're really in depth. And if it turns out that we don't bring in as much revenue as we thought, then we'd recalibrate and reconsider the staffing in there at that time.
Any other discussion?
Come on, Doc.
I'll do it. I do move to approve the 1.0 FTE environmental health specialist for the water lab.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Seems like the one who asks the most questions is the one who should do.
We have senior for person. I gotta go ahead and get you in there.
Continued discussion on Benton-Franklin Health Department bylaws. Voting structure presented by.
Chris, you going to the podium?
Huh?
You want to sit here in the chair?
Oh, I don't care, whichever you guys want, I'm comfortable either way.
You're right here.
Comfortable either way. So, I was, provided, as most of you know, I was provided a copy, and all of you were provided a copy of the resolution from Franklin County. And I was asked to look at that resolution on behalf of the health district, of the attorney, just for the health district, and whether or not that resolution and the proposed change to the bylaws would be consistent with the current law as it exists today. There's a memo that I don't know if anybody had an opportunity
It's
to
in the
look,
packet.
to look at it, but I believe it's attached to in your packet. But we did an analysis in my office of this proposal. And in essence, the proposal, as most of you know, is that Franklin County wanted to change the bylaws relative to voting, specifically on issues, and it would require an affirmative vote from one county commissioner of each respective county for decisions related to regulations, fee schedules, budgets, or budget amendments. In a review and analysis of this, we're looking at the enacting statutes and legislation that created the health districts. And quite honestly, those have been around for quite some time, but they were recently amended, as many of you know. And the amendment was to create a board of health that consisted not only of elected officials, but non-elected officials. And the legislation is, relatively clear. RCW 70.46.020 is the statute that governs health districts with 2 or more counties. And it specifically provides that the health district must have an equal number of elected board members and non-elected board members. The powers of the Board of Health as a whole, are actually very broad, and they're outlined in 74.46.060 as well as 70.05.060. And all of the powers that are provided by the legislature, which include the development of regulations, are vested in the entire Board of Health, with the exception of setting of a modification of permits, licensing, and application fees, which may only be determined by city and county elected officials. In this case, it's just county officials, but each district had an ability back when we made the changes to this, to add city officials if you wanted to. It was decided not to do that in this particular situation, but the statute does allow for it. There's the regulations that have been promulgated by the Department of Health, consistent with the statutory makeup, requires that if somebody is replaced on the Board of Health, that they must identify the equal number of non-elected officials as well as elected officials, and all are voting members of the board. Our current bylaws have very specific provisions in there that allows the Board of Health to establish the regulations as a whole. And there is the proviso in our bylaws that holds out and specifically indicates that only elected officials can vote on permits and fees and those types of things.
You did your homework. They got everything down written down.
Any any resolution that's passed under the WACs 246-90-015 must identify the non-elected members as voting members of this board. This proposed amendment, in my opinion, and looking at the statutes, would create a situation where a county could veto any vote of this board with one commissioner voting against it. And from either county. That, in my opinion, is not allowed under the current statutory and regulatory framework as enacted by the legislature and by the Department of Health pursuant to the regulations that they have promulgated.
Quick question for you. So you also sent this over to the PA's office at Benton County?
I was gonna get that, but I did. I sent my memo and a question to both Franklin County prosecuting attorney.
I'm cutting to the chase, because I know how attorneys are. My daughter just started as an attorney back in Tennessee. So what our civil attorney
And his opinion is that he agreed with our analysis in my memorandum. But when I sent it over to them, I even suggested to both of them that they may do an informal, what's called an informal request for an attorney general opinion. It's not a formal one. Formal ones can take years to get, but you can do what's called an informal. I can't do it. This board can't do it. It's got to be a prosecuting attorney. So I suggested to both Mr. Sand and Mr. Eisinger that they maybe submit this question to the Attorney General for an informal opinion. Mr. Altman, in reviewing the memo, said that he had other members in his employees looked at the memo and
that's Benton County.
Yes, Benton County. He's the chief civil deputy, and they agreed with my memo and my analysis. But he said that he would send it off to the Attorney General and see if we could get an informal opinion on it. I'm always open to, we have to be as lawyers. Many times I think I'm right and I'm sitting in front of a judge saying, I thought I was right, but apparently I'm not. So, so I'm always open to listening to, other ideas and other things. But the bottom line is that, I believe that the proposed amendment to the bylaws would be in violation of the statutes, and that, quite honestly, this needs to be addressed with the legislature itself.
Yeah.
And they need to change the statutes in order to allow this type of language to dictate the actions of a board of health.
Did you get a response from Mr. Sam?
I did not. And
Neither did I.
yeah, well, but he was in that trial. And so he was in a criminal trial, and, believe me, I don't blame him for, not looking at it. So, and I think he may get back.
Okay.
So
I hadn't heard anything, so that's why I wanted to find out.
Sure.
So I'm just going to cut to the case. I've reviewed it and I understand it. I respect all counties' opinions. We all get along, and we definitely talk and meet on different things and stuff like that. But I look at it as the Boy Scout in himself. Boy Scout here tells me that we got to do things right, follow the rules. I take ownership. All 4 members here, we interviewed, we appointed. I'll take responsibility for that. All of us did that. And so just to cut to the chase, I don't want to spend any more time on this, honestly. I want to go ahead and make sure this is done, and this is something that needs to change at the legislative level, that we need to talk to our state reps and state senators to do that. So I'm going to make a motion. We can discuss it after that. I make a motion that we stick and we use the current bylaws for the current bylaws that are for the Benton-Franklin Health District, period.
I do a second then.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify. Oh,
Just
discussion.
some discussion. Chris Burton's, thank you for this, for the summary. I just wanted to point out, it's just not non-elected. I mean, each one of these people have a certain expertise in the area of health. And so I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we just didn't come in off the street, was that Dr. Quandy, Marcy, Katie, and I all have some kind of expertise in health, and that's the reason that we were chosen.
Correct, as required by the statute. There's 4 categories that we need to comply with and bring members of the community in from those 4 separate categories. And that was done in the, that's contained within our bylaws, it's contained in the statutes, and that's what we do.
And I just want to say, my position, the at-large, I feel like I represent both counties and that we have to do what's right for the majority of all of the people that live in Benton and Franklin County. So I just wanted to make that clear that from my perspective, I would like to stick with the current bylaws and support Michael's motion.
Yeah, and then the last thing, I guess, I look at it as counties got to do what they have to do. Every county's unique and management style, policy style, needs, whether you're in a big metropolitan area or whether you're in more of an agricultural area. So I respect that. But at the point in time right now, until we get something changed from the state legislation, state legislators, I just don't see this where we're looking at some issues if we do this on the county side. I just don't think. Speak up for Benton County, we don't need to go that route. I wanted to make sure that we got that to our civil attorney as well. What his response was. Yeah, I know what his response was. Sure.
I'm gonna ask, Mr. McCart, do you have any discussion on this?
No, I don't disagree. I went back and reviewed the RCW that was passed. And I don't disagree with the attorney. I don't see how you can do what we were talking about in the bylaws for this particular entity. I still think that when you're doing regulations that affect both counties, that if both county commissioners vote no, that there should probably be some more discussion on the issue and it be brought back up to try and get that harmony to stay so that you don't break apart in the future, which was the attempt for the bylaws amendment in the first place. So, but you can't do it in the bylaws. I mean, you don't want to operate by consensus. That's true, but to the point you can get along as counties, that needs to happen.
Sure. Yeah, and I think if I count, I've been on the board for 4.5 years, and I think I can count 2 differences where the counties maybe disagreed on 2 different issues. One was on food permits and one was potentially on septic, and we're reviewing that today. Because we did have that, we want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
The intent was to keep the district together.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? At this point, I'll entertain a motion. Motion and second. I'll ask for the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
And what was that? What was the count?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll vote nay. Okay. That's fine. So
Chris.
that's 6. Thank you. You have adopted the Benton-Franklin Health Department Board of Health Rule number 2 on-site sewage.
Chair.
What's that?
It's a, you made it 3 now. Votes.
Oh,
Awkward years though.
Just for Jody.
Still love it.
Okay. Right, so, glad we have this on the agenda. Thank you for the opportunity to go through this again. A lot of the information here is going to be a little bit of a reiteration of what we brought to you all throughout last year. I think, talking about hearing the outcome of this bylaws discussion and what Wes said back there, it really makes me think of we may gain a little bit more consensus in going into the future and working on how we do our pre-rule approach. How do we work with you all as we're developing the rule over the year? we got a lot of feedback that we wanted it high level. And so we bring you, 30,000 foot view information. And then sometimes at the end, we realize maybe there was some more discussion that was desired to be had. We did have a side committee with industry members. Marcy participated as a board member there, but perhaps we can put together some sort of approach where we at least have, by county support in those pre-rule working meetings. And in actually going through and putting together this packet you have in front of you, I had the pleasure of going through board meeting minutes from the 70s to now. And there were some wild things in there, I'll tell you. But I noticed that was one of the approaches they took in the past, was having more of a Board of Health centric rule committee, not enough to form a quorum, but enough people that by the time the rule came to the actual formal meeting, it was more of a stamp and go, because we've had enough pre-conversation around the rule. So just a suggested approach.
Would that be on specific, just not everything, it's not a blanket thing, but just.
Probably for rules, right?
Yep.
Like ordinances, rules, things that are a little bit more weighty, like this onsite rule, because I hate to tell you, but I got more after this. So I have this packet in front of you today. I'm not intending to read over every single word. I do have kids to pick up tonight, so I don't want to keep you here all day. But we are going to go a little bit more granular, because that's the feedback I got, is we want to bring this back. We want to talk a little bit more about the why behind these rules, not just these rules, but this discussion is about local rules in general, because we have others. We have a local solid waste rule. We have other local rules. And so I really want to make sure that both, my team and your team also understands, our powers, our authorities here, and why and when we might consider local provisions. So, again, not going into the whole executive summary, but just kind of as an overview, I'm going to talk a little bit about our why, why we have sewage rules, why we have rules, talking about local rules. We're going to focus a little bit on what our local vulnerabilities are here in Tri-Cities, in our Benton-Franklin area region, because that's going to be important to tee up what Jody's going to go over, which was requested, which is we want to look at every area in that onsite rule where we maintain a provisions different than the state. And I'm going to use the phrase a lot more protective, because that's how we look at it. We don't look at it as more strict. We look at it as when we need something to be more protective, that's when a local rule is needed. So I also brought in a little history. Like I said, I went through a lot of board meeting minutes and put together a little bit of a timeline of this rule. I know there's, other voices in the room here to maybe support some historic conversations. I'll kind of leave that up to Janae in terms of calling on that. But I know my predecessors here, we have a few people here that can help fill in some of those historic questions if you have questions about the history of LEDA. So if we go to page 2, starting a little bit, again, when I'm going into these kinds of discussions, I always like to anchor in our why. And I know a lot of you will recognize this and hopefully appreciate it, but I want to start hundreds of years ago. And not to say we're going to go through all of that. But really, I think in today's day and age, sometimes we forget our connection to the origins of public health and why we have certain things like sewage treatment protections. We have to really think back to centuries ago when sewage is a cornerstone of public health. When we're seeing cholera outbreaks and typhoid and E. coli and Shigella and all the things that can spread through sewage. That's why we have seen implementation of sewage treatment. And in the late 19th century, the implementation of that technology was a major turning point in changing illness, especially through waterborne illnesses. So as we go through, as Jody goes through all of those technical sounding rules, remember that when we bring a rule to you, it is because it's rooted in one of these protections. There are other reasons which I'll go into, but primarily on-site sewage rules protect our drinking water. That's the primary purpose. You would think the primary purpose of a sewage rule is to prevent sewage from getting into people's mouth, but it's actually groundwater and drinking water is what we're most concerned about, because historically that's what's caused the most issues. Preventing disease, thinking about our local issues with algal blooms in our rivers. So sewage protections protect our surface waters, our rivers. It doesn't just impact groundwater, it impacts other waters as well. And then I think, a nexus between us and the counties and everybody, Carol, I appreciate your bringing forth that, as the non-elected members, you represent everybody, because that's what we do in public health. We don't set rules based on an individual complaint, an individual self-interest, an individual issue. We set rules at the population level, what's going to be best for the overall community. And our communities are growing rapidly. And so sewage, good infrastructure regulations around septic systems are important to make sure that we can support growth safely. If we're growing rapidly, but we're not growing safely, we're not doing it responsibly. Okay, so next page, I want to talk a little bit about local rules, because this is a question that came back, I think, from all sides of the aisle. I know, Commissioner Alvarez and I talked about it a little bit too. And why do we have a local rule? Why do we have a rule? I know Commissioner Mullen, you asked that at one of the meetings. Why do we have rules that are different than the state? Doesn't this just add costs? Doesn't it add barriers? And it can if they're made arbitrarily, but it is always our goal that when we bring a local rule before you, and I trust that my predecessors had this in mind as well, that we don't set rules that are arbitrary. They're brought here for a reason, primarily because there's a local condition, a local vulnerability that demands it. Our region is different than the west side. We know that. We talk about that a lot with rulemaking. I've spoken a little bit with my Department of Health counterparts about this in this meeting, and a lot of them have said, make sure to highlight that when we set rules at the state level, we set a minimum. So a state environmental health rule, that's a minimum standard. It's meant to be a minimum standard because it would not make sense to have a provision in a rule that speaks to shellfish growing beds when we have no shellfish growing beds here. So same thing with our conversation about nitrates. We're one of the few regions in the state who have highly concentrated nitrates in our groundwater. So it makes sense for us to go above and beyond. It doesn't make sense for the state to set that rule for everybody, because then it does add unintentional cost and barriers. So local rules are a minimum. We have local conditions. If you're speaking especially about on-site sewage rules, if you think about, like, let's say comparing to a food safety rule, a McDonald's is a McDonald's, no matter where you are in the state. But when it comes to a septic system, septic systems are so heavily tied to the soil you put them in, the geological conditions, the hydrogeological conditions, the climate. And Washington happens to be one of the states in the nation that has the most varied climate regions. So it's not uncommon. You'll see the kind of data highlight over here on the side of page 3. I worked with Department of Health to pull some numbers, and we're by far not in the minority. 20 out of 36 local health jurisdictions have their own on-site sewage rule because our state varies so much by sand and soil and geology. We're in the majority, in fact, at having this.
I just have
Yeah.
one question. Matt, would you take a look? You got this, don't you? Would you take a look at page 7 when you have a chance to see if that was the one? Just give me a thumbs up if that was the one.
He and I talked about it.
Talked about it, okay. I just, not jumping ahead, I just wanted to have him.
Yeah,
I could-
for sure.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so, and then I wanted to highlight a little bit about what are our local vulnerabilities. I know we all will connect with all of these, but we may not always have connected them back to on-site sewage and why they matter for on-site sewage. So talking about what makes us vulnerable, regionally. First, the nitrate risk, that's come up in this meeting before. We've talked about it a lot. We have experience with it. We work a lot with it. We know, later in the packet, I'm not going to make you skip back and forth, but if you want to see, there are 2 maps in here that show data on our nitrates in the area. So we know that parts of both counties are designated as very high nitrate priority areas by the Department of Ecology. We have shallow aquifers, we have really permeable soils. So our soils around here are another one of our kind of key components that you'll see woven throughout our local protections. Our area has a lot of sandy, fast draining soils. That means they don't filter contaminants well. Stuff flows through them quickly. And contaminants like nitrates, especially that are water soluble, they can they can flow through those soils quickly and move into the groundwater very easily, and they're very expensive to remediate and remove after they're in the groundwater. So nitrates are a reason we have some of the things that are a little bit different, and it's important because that's an important shared resource for our communities, groundwater. We have dry climate with a lot of irrigation. So the combination of those two, you might not have put it together, but the combination of those two actually kind of can elevate your nitrate risk. So if you're in an arid region, you don't have a lot of rainfall, nitrates can concentrate in the soil because there's not a lot of rainfall recharge. And then at seasonal times of year, we're pushing heavy amounts of irrigation into the ground, which can then drive it further down into the groundwater. So you will actually see, if you look at nitrate data in our region, you'll see seasonal peaks in the spring where it'll vary up a little bit. Typically it's because of a lot of irrigation. And then again, something to connect to all of us is that vast population growth. Franklin County is one of the top 4 growing counties in the state. Benton's in the top 7. So we're growing quickly. More homes mean more septic systems. We want to preserve rural character in a lot of our communities. We don't want, well, I would love it if we had sewer everywhere. Long-term commitments that we can work on. But in a lot of areas in our counties, we want to preserve that rural character and kind of keep it a little bit rural. But that means we need to make sure that when septic systems are going in the ground, they're going in the ground well, correctly, they're maintained and managed correctly, and that they're not impacting, other public health problems that can happen later. Okay, my last little kind of background is I wanted to look at the history of this rule. So Benton-Franklin Health District's rules and regulations number 2, which is our on-site sewage rule. This just took me down kind of a fun little project because I thought, I want to know the history and I want to know, all the different iterations. And it's not lost on me that 2025 is actually the 50th year. So we should be having a celebration for this. Instead of trying to put it in this grave. But 50 years, and like I said, one of my predecessors is here, and I have many predecessors before me, and you have many predecessors before you who have worked for 50 years now to uphold these local protections. And so I wanted to really see the weight of, well, we're talking about this rule. It is not just Jody and I plucking things out of thin air. We're not just saying, hey, we think we should do this thing. This is something that's been in place for 50 years. And you can see that cadence where you see state rule changes, we come to the board and we update our local rules. State rule changes, we come to the board, we update our local. We're continuing that pattern of practice, which is not just our practice, it's a common practice across the state. I've also peppered in a little bit in case questions come up about when did some of these specific changes come into play. You can see kind of in the mid-80s, we adopted an appeals process. Really in the early to mid 1990s is when we started seeing a lot more of these nitrate protections come into the rule. And that coincides with the mid to the end of the 90s, early 2000s is when we started to see a little bit more science emerging on nitrates. And so those coincide pretty squarely. We have changes to land, changes to loading rate, slope, things like that came into play in that time frame. So I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to hand it to Jody. She's going to go through all of the table. But before I do, I just want to wrap up by reminding you that when we're looking at everything that Jody's talking about today, when we bring any sort of local rule forward or local rules that have been brought before, the provisions are in place because it's either fixes or provides a stopgap for some sort of vulnerability we have locally. But I also don't want it to be lost on you that we're also considering operational practice. If we continue to see issues with the same thing over and over and over that are costly to us as a district, then a rule may be, something that goes beyond a policy. We can't legally just put some of these things in policy. We have to bring it to you to say, this has been an issue. It's costing homeowners. It's costing us. We need a rule to fix it. That's the second reason we bring rules. The third is if we see common practice across LHJs, others are doing it, we've evaluated it, and there's enough data and analysis to know that this works and it's not providing a barrier, then that may, rise to that level as well. So those are usually our considerations. And just again, want to hammer home that we're not just plucking things out of thin air. We're making sure that we're doing our our legwork and bringing things to you that are not arbitrary. So, Jody's gonna go through the table. Each, this represents each section of our local rule where we are slightly more protective or different than the state rule. It is 2 pages. I want to highlight that the state rule is 55 pages. So in the grand scheme of things, we do not actually have that many areas where we set out to be different. Some of them are impactful, but it's minor compared to some other LHJ's on-site rules. So I'm gonna hand it to Miss Jody and be kind on her because she's still recovering from illness and yep, take it away.
Okay, so, in going through this, I pulled out every place where I noticed we were different from the state rule. And to start out with, the ones up front, we didn't change this go around. So this is not something that was changed, but we are different in our permit expiration date. The state allows for a maximum of 5 years, and we use a maximum of 1 year, and that's pretty much industry standard for permits that are issued for building and other projects that the people may have. Table 4, that's for horizontal setback. And BFHD historically added a couple sections. One was for trees, utility poles, driveways, patios, impervious surfaces. The purpose for that was to allow space for repairs and maintenance, to allow airflow to keep the system working properly, keeping damage causing elements away from the system components. So with that regard, a 10-foot setback from trees is one of the things that we had added. Trees, we've seen it when we go out to failed systems that the roots will have invaded the lines and clogged the system from working. We have a horizontal setback for natural drainage areas. This is crucial for several reasons. Besides preventing damage to the drain field, it maintains the natural flow of water to prevent erosion and flooding. And soil that's been disturbed is more susceptible to damage influences by water. And water is the one thing that we are putting into these drain fields. Slopes. There are a number of places where we differ in slopes. Again, this is a geology difference because we have all those sandy soils. And it's well known to engineers that sandy soils do not make stable slopes. And again, water is the reason that those slopes are failing. So we have a minimum slope of 20% versus the state's 30 to 45%, depending on the system type that they have.
So bottom line, it's the type of soils on the west side versus the east side.
Right. So we do have a greater cover soil depth requirement than the state. We asked for 12 inches of cover soil over the top of the trench. This is to protect from freezing as well as to allow for irrigation to be installed and not damage the drain field.
We have sprinklers.
Yeah, we all have underground sprinklers. We all have pipes at least 6 to 12 inches below grade, and that's right where your drain field is. So that is protective there. The monitoring maintenance, we did add this one that all septic tank lids, as well as the access to distribution boxes, be brought up to surface grade. The state set out a requirement that we have no control over, that in 2027, there will be septic system inspections for property sales. So if you have a septic system, that you have to have it inspected. This bringing it up to surface grade allows the owners to be able to maintain their systems more easily. You don't have to dig around your yard trying to find a distribution box. And it increases the probability of maintenance. If it's easy to get to, people are going to do it. And also it provides a place to troubleshoot when something goes wrong. So we've had several instances where over time the distribution box has settled and so it wasn't level. When they dug that up, they could see that. They were able to rectify that without having to replace a drain field, which was much less costly, having to repair the drain field.
You know, I think that what I've been involved with probably several hundred, septic inspections throughout my career. And I don't think that's a bad idea because the homeowner knows where it's at. It's easier to see if there's an issue, it's easier to address than versus having surprise to a home buyer or and you're right, home sellers tend to maintain it better. So I don't think that's a bad idea here.
So with regard to the next one, which is record drawings, the state allows the homeowners to perform the record drawing and submit it to the health department. We do that service. We consider that part of the permit that we are issuing. So when we do our final inspection, included in that is our drawing of the septic system, which allows for accuracy and consistency from drawing to drawing. And it also helps things get completed more timely, sorry.
One other question, when you're talking about the last one you just talked about, that's all the other one. How about all the existing? Is that their grandfathered in at this time?
For which one? The drawings?
Monitoring and maintenance?
Yes.
Yes, yes, they are.
I'll make sure.
Yeah, when we go out there, we always recommend that they, and it's met with a lot of, wow, I didn't think of that. Agreement, especially for adding the access force to the lids of the tanks. The distribution boxes, that one's gonna take time.
Yep.
Partly because they'll have to find them. Loading rates, here again, we have a lower loading rate than the state. And that allows for an increase in drain field size, which allows for the drain field to spread the water out over a larger area. And it's well known that soil that is not completely wet does a better job of filtering than soil that is constantly damp. So by spreading it out, it allows the soil to dry out a little bit each time, and then you get better treatment. So having a larger drain field increases that, which also helps with ultimately the nitrate problem that we have. Next one, there is a small little footnote on table 6 that says we will allow for pressure distribution on larger lots instead of some of the more expensive proprietary systems that are required. So it's actually a benefit to them to have that larger size lot. The lot size. We utilize a minimum lot size of 1/2 acre on a lot. This is what science has shown to be the most protective and the least restrictive for nitrate reduction. So sorry.
We have more, I'll say the land development and resident owner install. We're sort of gauging, those were the two things that garnered the most comments, I think, in the past. So we do have some more information in the back packet. If we want to go into more depth, I'll leave that to you all if you want to have more questions. When she gets to the resident owner ones, we have pictures in the back. We just included pictures. There's pictures of issues we've seen, so you can kind of see.
So I brought a real engineer in, very smart guy.
Real engineer.
I don't think so.
I was an electrical engineer side of it, until I got smart, left the engineering side, we did bring someone in here. And that one there, we talked about a little bit, what do you feel about that? Had any questions?
The 1/2 acre lot. From reading it and looking at the science and the support that's out there, I think given what we have in this area, as Taryn pointed out, it's kind of contradictory to what people think. Hey, we have great drainage soil. Why do we need such big lot areas? Well, the protection is groundwater quality.
Yeah.
That's what we're concerned about. So I happen to live in an area that has a well and has a septic system. If we went to smaller than a 1/2 acre lot size, it could double the number of lots in my area. And I get my water tested every year. I'm hovering right there at the 10 grams per liter on the nitrates. If we double the number of lots, my well's gonna be contaminated. Guarantee it.
Yeah.
So I think what we're doing here is smart.
and let's be honest, most of the areas we're talking about with septic systems, we're out in the rural area and how does having a half acre lot size hurt us there? We're preserving that rural character and protecting groundwater at the same time. It makes perfect sense to me.
Perfect. And we did a little homework before we came here, but I wanted to make sure that he came here.
I had to too, being a builder and doing foundation work, excavation work, going in Franklin County or Benton County, the soil is different in certain areas. So this makes sense how we're doing this because protecting the well water like you're bringing up, where if we were on the west side, because I did some projects in Wenatchee, some other parts of the state where there's a lot more rock, a lot more, so it makes sense on that side to where we do need to be a little more strict on this side because there's more sand, more silt, more.
Those clay soils you get on the other side of the Cascades,
Yeah.
filter out those contaminants. It's really, really.
Yeah, so it makes sense what you guys are, what we're pushing for to do. And I know it does affect some homeowners where it's gonna it costs them more money, but again, it's protecting them more down the road by doing this.
I don't want to skip forward too far, but if you go forward a couple pages of the table here. That shows you the actual differences. Where we're at is in blue, where the state is in black.
Yeah.
So in reality, if you look at the difference between type 4 and type 5 soil, less than 1,000 square feet.
Right.
It's really only 1 or 2 soil types, so it's only a very few lots that would be impacted by this in the first place. There's science to support a half acre minimum. I know we have Rick here, who was my predecessor, and he was on the technical advisory committee for the state, and the state rule, and has shared with me that they brought this to the state level to want to pass as a statewide half acre minimum, but the comment came up that, hey, why should we in, the west side of the state deal with this when we don't have nitrate? So they backed it down to add what's now called table 12 in the state rule. There is now what we call, there's a nitrogen calculation table. So there are still exceptions to having a smaller lot. We set out a half acre, but you could still ask for a waiver if you do specific nitrogen calculations and you can show that your lot isn't going to overload the nitrogen or you have treatment. There's other exceptions also if you're in, this is where I'm really interested, I think, in this future partnership and looking at how we can work together with the county specifically, is if you're in a planned sewer development area, then there's exceptions to having smaller lots if you're on septic. If we know we're going to be extending sewer into that area within a certain amount of time. So that's partnership opportunity for a bigger solution change. And planned unit development, so that's another area where you can average the lot sizes. There's other solution, bigger even than this, solutions that we have on the table for this. Where we can still keep these protections we know are scientifically supported in place, and we can seek more specific policy changes in the future.
Totally makes sense.
So can I clarify, is this a half acre per building, per residence, or is it a half acre per system?
It's kind of both.
Okay.
That gets very complicated.
That, yeah.
Auxiliary use dwellings too.
Right,
How so we
and
could double
that's-
the.
So when you're looking at putting on ADUs and stuff, then there's additional density calculations we would use. You wouldn't have to double the lot size if you're still within a specific density of sewage that you're putting into the ground. So up and until you exceed that density, there's a formula for it, then you could put multiple little things on the same lot. It's not like you have to have half acre for your greenhouse and half acre for your, I would be in trouble if that. Did I miss anything there? Okay.
The minimum usable land area, so back in 2000, or 1995, that was when we first added usable land area. And that was a sufficient amount of land where a septic system could be installed. The state recently added usable land area this go around, and their limits were quite low, I thought, but I've also thought that ours were quite high. So we've reduced ours by half, which will allow people to still create their dream home. They have more than one option of where that dream field can go. If you go by the state's minimum land area, that is the only place that that drain field will go. They use the barest of minimums. Ours are a bit larger. And that will allow people more choices as to where to put your drain field versus where to put your home. And so when you have to make that choice is available. There may be times when you can waver back down to that smaller area, and that can be looked at too. But in general, we want people to be able to use their land in the way that they will benefit them the most.
So the minimum usable land area, and I don't want to get into like too much technical here, but minimum land area, think about that as the lot size. And the usable land area is how much on that lot is usable for putting in a septic system. Are there impediments in the soil? Are there, is there rocky soil? Is there concrete, something that can't accept water? And this is where I will say I'm a little fuzzy, a little bit more fuzzy on the history here. So I may vote a friend on this one. But from what I can read back in notes from the Department of Health, from some of their technical advisory committee meetings, when they were discussing minimum usable land area, they brought it to play in light of nitrates, actually, because pervious surfaces, so surfaces on your property where water can infiltrate through, are critical for providing infiltration of that precipitation, which dilutes nitrates. So again, that's where you see on this table, we got significantly less strict than our last rule, but we are still slightly more strict than the state rule because of our nitrate issue. So we want people, again, we have a rural area, we have people who want to put shops and pools and things on their property. If we went by the state's minimum usable land area, that's not happening. 2,000 square feet on a lot is nothing. That's the home. That's it. Nothing else. And so we want to be able to maintain that, but we also want to be able to maintain those protections, those nitrate protections. The other thing I want to bring up here that we'll hopefully be bringing back maybe next month is, and I thank you all for challenging us to go back through this, because in going back through our rule, we actually realized that we left in a duplicate definition. Jody pointed out we were trailblazers, and in 1995, we adopted the minimum usable land area. We made that up. And the state then this year copied us. They said, we like that. We're going to do that. So that's a BFHD thing that we inspired, but we accidentally left both definitions in. And so we need to take out our old definition. And the reason we want to do that is our definition says that minimum usable land area includes 3 feet of vertical separation. We don't want that because technology has changed now. So there are systems that can be installed down to 12 inches of depth. We want to give more flexibility to installers to put these different systems in. So if we strike out our definition, we are significantly opening up a lot of potential land development. I know Jody and Dina, who's our on-site supervisor here, pointed out that there's a lot of areas in Benton County where sometimes short plats can't go through because the soils are so rocky. And that would help that. So we do want to make that change. We think it would be a positive change. But I'll probably have to go back through some rigmarole to get that changed.
Okay. Another thing is the state called it minimum usable land area, but our definition was just usable land area. So they were not one right after each other.
Yeah.
They were at two ends of the
unintentional, but that we realized that has caused a little confusion on. I thought you said you were making that less strict, and I went, we are. And then I looked and I go, ooh.
You're allowing some opportunity there. You're allowing homeowners to have you use the land to the best of the ability.
And that's the intent, is to find that bridge between, we
Right,
want to
best
be
use.
flexible, we want to allow development, and while still maintaining population protection.
All right, that's good job.
So you want to touch on the homeowner stuff? And then
Homeowner.
look at some other pictures and-
resident homeowner installation and design. So this is an area that we have a lot of struggles with. So one of the things that we added was that if a homeowner was to install their own system, it had to be one that did not include any electrical component. Electrical components are usually more a system that requires an electrical component is usually more complex. It often requires an engineer's design and then ultimately a sign off by labor and industry. So it's a lot more to it. So we are asking that the homeowners take an exam. And they're not charged a fee, although we did say may, but we're not. Because homeowners do not have the expertise to install these systems. This septic system works for the future. It's not something that it's just gonna work for them inside their home and they're gonna be the only ones affected by it. If that system is installed improperly, it's gonna affect the groundwater and that affects public health. So it affects a lot more than just that. So we want them to have our installers pass an exam before they're allowed to install and to have a homeowner take a basic knowledge. And a Totality test is not, it's open book. It's open book. They can take as long as they want. They can take it as many times as they need to get it correct. But to just have that information before they install. All of these installations that, we can show you, they will all say, oh, wow, I wish I would have known that. And this will make sure that they know that before they start doing those installations.
I do have a question on that. So, I'm looking here on this page and it says the test is free, straightforward, and ensures homeowners understanding the basic requirements, blah, 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 blah. But you said you're not going to do it. Is there a verbiage that you're going to have in there that says, and that's what my question is. You said that it's going to be free, but you may charge them a fee, but you're not.
That's what's in the rule is may charge a fee. Yeah. We, through.
What would be the instance you would charge them a fee then?
I think that's just catch all for, potential future. We don't know when we get into these.
Or additional inspection or something.
We would honor, I think, we would honor coming back to the board and having more discussion on it if we started, because we would have to get approval for a new fee. So there naturally has to be discussion if we want to put that new fee on the fee schedule. You just never know when you get into it, right? How many problems you run into. And I think this one is a good one to highlight that. This is the area where we have local rules that are dictated by operational needs and operational efficiency needs. Nothing we're bringing here today is because of any one personal self-interest or one situation or one-off. This is because we're seeing problems over and over and over and over. And they're not just problems that are impacting us, our time, our staff time, which ultimately impact your bottom line, right? You all are paying for some of our staff time, but they're impacting homeowners' time. So I would, we have a few sample questions here. If you want to see kind of the tone of the exam. It's not rocket science, but it's also not easy. It's not common sense. And that's, I think, what we run into is we've got, I'm a very DIY person. So I would be the type of person that I can do that. But there are a lot of homeowners that are very skilled. They're, retired engineers. There's people who are in the industry. There are a lot of people who are very skilled and may likely be able to do this well on their own, but that's not our common truth. That's not our common experience here. That's the exception to the rule. Our common experience is seeing things like this. I asked the land use staff to hey guys, just send me your pictures of your homeowner installs. These are just recent ones. I mean, we've got a treasure trove. We look at some of the pictures we see here, just, the picture speaks 1,000 words, right? Go ahead.
Thank you for all this technical information. What I'm wondering is kind of do we have any evidence to show that our high nitrate levels in our community have actually caused health problems? Do you know, Dr. Quandy, are there any studies out there that say you traditionally have had high nitrate levels, you have a higher average of stomach cancers or blue baby syndromes, or are there any of those evidences that would lead us to believe that,
I don't know to my knowledge that we have any specific local data on it, but there is a lot of science out there connecting high nitrate risk. Go ahead, yeah.
Part of the Columbia Basin groundwater management area actually did some infant testing about 15 years ago of infants in Franklin County that would have had access to high nitrate water. They did not find any elevated methane hemoglobin levels in any of those babies, but I mean, I think that the mindful thing is we put people on formula, we change formulas to canned formula, and baby's not thriving before we consider that diagnosis of blue baby syndrome. So oftentimes, any of those fixes that they would make the child thrive, and the risk goes away. And by the time they start drinking that local water again, their digestive system has matured enough that it's not an issue.
And the blue baby syndrome is not a reportable condition either, so you wouldn't have record of it if it did appear.
To have an acute event, you have to have a significant surge. What we're talking about here is chronic leaking of nitrate into groundwater, which has been associated with cancers, specifically colorectal cancers, GI cancers, bladder cancers, mostly, and thyroid.
Because I do know that this area has a higher than average colorectal cancer rate, so I don't
And
know. if
thyroid.
And yeah,
Oh, wow.
thyroid cancer is another one.
Thank you.
Do we want to look through, I think looking through some of the examples of the.
I just had one. Oh, I just had one more before we go look at the examples. And that was the homeowner design. We wanted to not have homeowners design their system. They think that all they need to do is submit a plot plan that shows where everything is on the lot. To them, that's all they're doing. They're not considering the type of soil. They're not considering the size of the drain field, the depth of the drain field, the setbacks, and considering the future uses of their lot. Those are all things that get considered by a designer, and something that we are hoping to reduce the time that we spend with the homeowners, making them aware of these issues and then correcting what they've done. And it causes a lot of time slowdowns when you have to send something back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until it meets our approval. So if an engineer or a licensed designer does the plan, it's usually, if there's something we have to change, it's a one and done. But that's not the case when it's homeowner, well,
We're still allowing designs of gravity.
and we are
systems.
still
So simple
allowing,
systems, they can still.
they can
design.
still do their own designs of the simple systems, but
More
we
complex
are,
to do it.
right.
Do you have a sense of what range of costs there were to homeowners who botched it?
It's mostly time when they bought, because, and they're anxious to get going. The building department will not issue their permit until they have their septic permit, so they're anxious to get going.
So Jody, do you want to walk us through a few of these, just so you can get, I really, pictures are good, but they always, also some of them show the weight of some of these things, like the time and energy and cost that goes into what is a minor mistake and an unintentional mistake on the part of the resident installer, but are costly. So if you look at the first one.
So the first one, I'm not sure, they redid their drain field, but they forgot to connect it back up to the tank. And so all the water that was effluent, sewage, just drained out, kind of sewage on the ground kind of thing, until
Yeah,
it was a time.
extreme example, right? They just flat out didn't connect the tank to a drain field.
The next one, the small white flexible line is the water line, and it is right up next to the sewer line. So you've got your water running right along the septic outlet line, which the concern is not so much that the water to the house is going to get contaminated with sewage. It's that if there's a break in this line, water is going to follow the path of least resistance, which is the sewer line to the drain field, which is going to flood out their drain field. And so we want at least 10 feet between the sewer and the water lines. Well, this is a distribution box. I think it kind of speaks for itself. Supposed to be level. Not this one. I went back to this one like 3 times just on the cover soil issue. Because the first time they just did it flat. And then when I told them that they needed additional cover soil, they just mounted it up over the line. So they had 4 speed bumps.
So they did what she's told.
They did what.
Literally.
Very literally. And again, this was not the only time I ever saw this.
3 to 4 visits back to the site. And
Now your art's gonna look good.
well-meaning, I tell you, DIY people, I grew up in a DIY household, well-meaning, but sometimes it's like,
Right.
okay. This is not what we meant.
So the next one, you've got 90-degree lines coming in from the house, between the house and the tank. And for septic systems, that's a no-no because that's where solids are going to get hung up and cause clogs. And so there's 2 of these before the tank. And then the pipe between the first tank and the second tank is wrong. It should be a stronger strength tank. So when those tanks are put in, they're put in a big hole that's completely excavated out, and then you put the dirt back in it. But the tanks are the dirt is gonna settle over time. And the pipe could get crushed or cracked if it's not the right strength. So it needed to be a stronger pipe there. This one, not readily evident, but the trench is only 24 inches wide instead of 36 inches wide, which means that they did not have enough drain field to support their home. So they had to put in, they can have a 24-inch trench, that's okay, but you need more lines or longer lines.
That's actually a big.
So that was a big
right?
surprise because then
The whole redo. It's because of a simple mistake, like Jody pointed out before, that they maybe went down to the rental store and rented the backhoe they had and didn't ask for the larger bucket, and they just dumped the lines out.
This one just shows, the distribution boxes are, each line from the distribution box is meant to go to its own individual line in the drain field. And this one has them branching off. And so we're not getting equal flow. So from one line, it's going to 2 lines. And then from this other one here, it's going out to 3. This one's a little more obvious that sewage is supposed to run downhill, not uphill. And those flexible joints allow for that. And the last one, I have honestly no clue why they put a on and off valve in the distribution box, but if that was shut, this distribution box would not accept sewage at all. And it would back up into the house because it literally took the drain field out. So.
Please remind me of what the issue was with the Franklin County resident. What was the issue? Was it the depth of? Do you remember?
No, I mean,
Okay.
we've had, from time to time, we have issues that we deal with around on-site, but I think that the question at the board meeting about this section was raised about why we're requiring them to take an exam. That the sentiment, I think, was people can figure it out. They're smart, they'll, know what they're doing. And while I agree, there's a lot of homeowners that they do this well. But there's more that don't. And that's what we see is a lot of extra time on our part. This is a lot of rework on the part of the homeowner. And it's just, an operational need to put something low barrier. And again, when we're bringing rules here, we want to find the rule that is the lowest barrier. And we felt that this is the lowest barrier, a free open book exam. That should take less than an hour of your life. The alternative is we charge significantly more for homeowner designs, and we don't want to do that. So we could totally skyrocket the cost, which that's a bigger barrier to me than that person taking an hour out of their day to do what we're already asking them to do. Our team provides them with what they call a yellow book. It's a full book of design guidelines that helps them with, here's all the things you need to know before we come out for your inspection. We've done all the education, we've provided all the resources, and we're still seeing issues. That's when we know there's something that needs to be fixed, we feel.
And they would be able to answer all the questions on the exam from the yellow book. They don't have to go to the WAC and try to interpret the WAC into where.
We just want to know that they read it. It's just a check that you read the information we gave you and We're also not in the minority here. There's many other LHJs that require an exam for homeowners for installing.
So on a lighter note, what's a passing grade? Is it 70%?
100.
Take it over and over and over.
Keep taking it.
No curve.
As someone whose next door neighbor might be installing on his own, I love the idea of a test. Please screen that out because I don't want to live next to somebody or, you know, downstream,
Right.
you know, taking in your irrigation and spraying that all over your crops. I don't think so. I love that test.
Yeah, I mean,
Because the guy who can do it is going to pass the test
Yeah.
readily. And anyone who can't is going to know and learn.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, the points that were raised before about, well, there's people who are engineers, there's people who are, yes, they are. And if they are, they're gonna fly through that test, no problem. And if they're not, then we're gonna save us all a little bit of time. And I think your call out there, you know, being a neighbor, again, just to bring this back to whether it's this, the nitrates, the groundwater, this is all about holistic protections for the system of our community. Shared, your groundwater is a shared resource. You may live in a home now, but somebody downstream might buy that home. So these are all protections that we feel like are necessary for that population level protection that speak to local issues we've had over and over, or put us more in line with standard practice with other LHJs. So I think that's all we have.
Is Commissioner Didier on? I know he had some questions.
There is an iPhone that just says COMM, but that's not how he's shown up before, so.
It's Commissioner Didier. I'm listening to everything.
Did you have any questions, sir?
No questions, but I would have a lot of comments if I was in the meeting, but I am busy at the time, so I am listening.
Anything else the board would like from us at this point in terms of a re-review of the rules?
All right, on to announcements, financial statements. Federal.
Thank you.
Preparing.
Nice packet.
All right, hello again, everybody.
You looking at it. When's your birthday? I'm getting you a gavel.
Let him talk.
Oh, I'm talking. It's fine. So this summer, BFHD underwent our single audit and our financial statement audit. And I'm happy to report that we had a clean audit with no findings or material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. If any of you would like, I can send you a link to the website for the SOA, or you guys can search up audit report 1037953. And then the other announcement, BFHG has started our budget process. The next step for the budget for the board would be the fee schedule that we'll bring next month. And it won't be a full revision, and have minor changes for you guys.
All right, thank you. Approval of vouchers.
I'm not asking any questions. Don't look at me.
I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Health approve the payment of vouchers 59-2025 through 78-2025 in the amount of $3,374,551.62.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Date of the next meeting is October 15th, 2025. There's no weather business for the good of the county. This meeting is adjourned.